And now let's get started in Claude then. So in general, today I've prepared two different examples that we're going to walk through in Claude. The first one is a live walkthrough of assessing clinical and commercial asset. And this is using the Amass connector. And the other example is then either a target prioritization or indication landscape analysis, and looking at some of the outputs that we can create in Claude. But let's start inside Claude itself first. So here we go. Here we have Claude. And as you see, I've created a blank webinar project here now. And right now I haven't connected anything into Claude. I have a couple of skills in the background, but also show you how to set one up for you later. And I see there's a question about getting access to slides later. So you also have access to the recording afterwards. So you can always come back to that. So if you miss anything, we'll have the recording ready for you after this as well. Okay, so back to Claude. I assume everyone's more or less familiar with Claude. And actually, maybe as part of that, we can take a quick poll on what you're actually using internally. So we'll have people vote here. Let's see who wins. So I assume that the majority of people here are using Claude, at least to some extent. We have some ChatGPT, Gemini. So Claude is definitely predominant in this crew. And this is really useful to know. So of course, anything that we do in Claude can also be carried over to some extent to other tools as well, like ChatGPT or Gemini. And same logic, similar strategies to actually creating prompts or creating skills or instructions can also be applied to some extent. Okay, so now that we're in Claude, I'm just going to start by setting up Amass here. And in order to set up Amass yourself, you do need to have an Amass account. So just make sure that if you don't have one, you can do that afterwards by just going to the Amass webpage. And you can click on try for free here. We have the app or MCP connector that you can just sign up for, and then you'll have access to Amass as well. So in Claude, I'll just go to settings here and connectors. And as you can see here, I already have Amass here. If you don't have Amass, you can browse connectors. So just add and search for Amass. And you can see here we have a verified Amass connector. Click on the plus icon to connect to Claude. And then we need to authenticate. And this just verifies with Amass that you have an Amass account, have a user account, and then we're basically ready to go. So now you should be able to see Amass as part of the connectors in here. So that's active, and we're ready to go for this session. And just a couple of words when we're actually inside Claude. There are a few things to consider. If I go to the project here, we can add instructions, we can add context to the project itself. In today's session, I'll actually just use skills. But if you do use context, so let's say if you have your own papers that you're using, then there's also what we call a context window for how much of that these models can actually take into account in terms of let's call it memory at once. For Opus 5 and Sonnet 5 on the paid plans, it's 1 million tokens, and other models can be lower. So this would correspond to roughly 50 to 70 papers. So if you're uploading PDFs of 20 to 30 pages, then this would be supported. And beyond that, what we call a RAG would be used, which is a system for then storing these files in kind of a bulk storage and then giving instructions on where to and how to find the data, which behaves slightly differently and than it would if it's just a smaller data set that you're searching across. And one thing to be aware of, even if we've connected Amass, if we upload a set of papers here, they're not connected in the same way that they would be in Amass. So for instance, when you have an identifier, let's say a molecule that references to clinical trial data that also carries references to literature, it's not that kind of built-in connection, as we would call it, maybe in Amass, where you can actually directly traverse the different nodes from one to another. But Claude is of course able to reason then across finding this identifier here and so on. But of course, we all know that there are synonyms as well used for maybe the same molecule, same drug with the marketed name, with the INN, with other program names as well. So it can be quite complex also to find your way through this accurately, at least.